The most important part of this headline isn't the word peace. It's the phrase, new cards on the battlefield. Because that isn't diplomatic language. That's leverage language. That's the language you use when you want everyone, Washington, allies, markets, and mediators, to understand one thing. The next move won't look like the last one. BBC reports Iran is warning it has new cards on the battlefield. At the same time, Pakistan is preparing for possible peace talks. If you read those two lines separately, it sounds like a contradiction. One side talks about escalation, the other side talks about negotiation. But in live conflict, that combination is not unusual at all. It's a pattern. It's how pressure and diplomacy travel together. Here's what you need to understand. Peace talks don't start when everyone feels calm. They start when at least one side believes the next phase could get worse and wants to shape it. And new cards is Iran's way of saying, if negotiations are coming, we're not walking in empty-handed, because no serious actor enters talks without leverage. Not if they expect the other side to listen, not if they believe they've been ignored before, not if they think pressure is the only language that moves the room. So what are new cards? That phrase is intentionally vague, and the vagueness is part of the weapon. Vague threats force everyone else to plan for multiple possibilities at once, and planning for multiple possibilities is expensive. It ties up assets. It raises alert levels. It increases insurance costs. It creates political anxiety. In other words, it changes behavior. Now add Pakistan. Pakistan is not a distant observer. It borders Iran. It has internal security sensitivities that spike when regional conflict heats up. It is heavily exposed to energy and trade shocks. And it has relationships, formal and informal, that can sometimes move messages when public diplomacy cannot. So when Pakistan prepares for possible peace talks, it doesn't automatically mean a summit is scheduled. It often means something more urgent and more realistic, backchannel positioning, testing whether both sides will accept a process, a venue, a mediator framework, or at minimum a deconfliction channel to prevent accidents. That's why these two ideas belong in the same headline. New cards is Iran saying, don't assume talks will freeze the battlefield. Pakistan preparing talks is Pakistan saying, don't assume escalation is inevitable. And right in the middle is the danger zone, the period where everyone wants leverage, everyone wants to avoid looking weak, and everyone wants the other side to move first. That's when miscalculations happen. That's when small incidents become big incidents, because leaders interpret ambiguity as intent. So tonight, I'm going to break down what this phrase likely signals, why Pakistan is a plausible messenger, even if it isn't the obvious one, and what new cards usually look like in modern conflicts, not as speculation for entertainment, but as a map of possibilities, so you understand what to watch next. Let's translate new cards on the battlefield into the kinds of options it typically implies, because states don't speak like that unless they're trying to shift the opponent's risk calculus. A new card is rarely a single secret superweapon. Most of the time, it's one of these categories. First, a new domain of pressure. If past pressure was mostly political, the new card becomes economic. If past pressure was mostly economic, the new card becomes maritime risk. If past pressure was mostly direct state to state, the new card becomes proxy activity. The point is to open a lane where the other side has fewer prepared defenses and more political sensitivity. Second, a new scale or tempo. Even if the tools are not new, the volume can be. More frequent operations, wider geographic scope, shorter reaction windows. The new is in how fast the system is forced to respond. Third, a new kind of deniability. Modern cards often rely on ambiguity, actions that can be blamed on unknown actors, local forces, technical incidents, or unconfirmed reports. Ambiguity forces the other side into a dilemma. Respond hard and risk escalation based on incomplete information, or respond softly and risk appearing weak. Fourth, a political card, time to talks. This matters here because Pakistan is preparing peace talks. In many conflicts, escalation signals spike right before negotiations, not after, because parties want to set the agenda. It's the logic of bargaining. You raise the cost of ignoring you, then you offer a path to reduce that cost. So what specific kinds of cards might be implied in a Gulf region context, without inventing facts that aren't confirmed? They could include maritime pressure that affects shipping confidence, warnings, advisories, increased risk signaling, expanded proxy signaling, not necessarily a new group, sometimes it's a new coordination pattern, cyber or electronic disruption affecting logistics, media narratives, or communications, reliability, new targeting priorities, not necessarily new weapons, but new focus on infrastructure, choke points, or command nodes, negotiation leverage cards like prisoner issues, sanctions, linked bargaining, or conditional de-escalation offers packaged as terms. The core concept is systems pressure. Iran doesn't need to win a conventional contest ship for ship or jet for jet to change outcomes. It only needs to make the system around the conflict more expensive, more uncertain, and more politically painful. Now here is where Pakistan's role becomes crucial. Pakistan's mediation potential doesn't come from being universally trusted, it comes from being connected. It has a direct border reality with Iran. It has a history of security and diplomatic engagement with the US ecosystem. It has relationships in the broader region that matter for energy stability and crisis containment. And it has a powerful incentive: avoid a wider regional fire that spills into domestic instability. When Pakistan prepares for peace talks, the early stage is often not public diplomacy. It's a messenger function, testing whether the US side will accept a channel without preconditions, testing whether Iran will accept a channel without losing face exploring sequencing, who pauses what first, and how both sides claim they didn't blink pushing for deconfliction rules to reduce the chance of accidents at sea or in the air. This is the part that matters most. Pakistan can help create permission for contact when both sides publicly insist they won't move first. But that's also why Iran's new cards warning shows up now. It is telling Pakistan and everyone else, we can talk, but don't misread our readiness for talks as weakness. The battlefield still has options. That is a negotiation posture. And it's also a warning about timing, because if the new cards are designed to create urgency, then the next phase could move fast, faster than official diplomacy can control. Now let's talk about what happens next, because when you see escalation language and mediation language rise together, the future usually branches into three paths. Path 1, Pakistan opens a channel and new cards become bargaining leverage, not battlefield action. This is the controlled scenario. Iran's warning functions as a negotiating anchor. We have options, so take talks seriously. Pakistan's work functions as a procedural bridge. The battlefield doesn't freeze, but the most escalatory actions become less likely because both sides prioritize avoiding an incident that would collapse the channel. What it looks like, intermediaries start using procedural language. Channels, technical discussions, framework, avoid misunderstandings, fewer absolutist statements, more conditional phrasing, quieter operational tempo in the most sensitive lanes, especially maritime and air. Path 2, talks are floated, but new cards are used anyway, creating a pressure-backed negotiation. This is common in modern conflicts. Diplomacy continues while pressure increases. It's not a contradiction, it's a tactic. If Iran believes the other side only moves under stress, it may increase stress while still leaving a door open. Pakistan's channel becomes less about peace and more about deconfliction, preventing accidents while pressure rises. What it looks like: continued warnings and risk signaling, elevated shipping advisories, and market volatility, intermittent incidents that stop short of full escalation. Lots of talk about restraint, but little reduction in leverage behavior. Path 3, the new cards include a move that forces everyone to respond, and peace talk preparation becomes damage control. This is the dangerous path. The new card becomes a catalytic event, or sequence of events, that spikes the risk environment sharply. Pakistan's mediation role shifts from building talks to preventing a spiral. The problem is that once a catalytic incident occurs, domestic politics on all sides hardens, and compromise becomes harder. What it looks like: emergency diplomacy by multiple actors at once, sharp changes in shipping behavior, delays, holding patterns, reroutes, louder deterrence messaging and posture shifts, fast blame cycles that limit room for quiet solutions. Now here is the most important insight. These paths are not decided by who has the best argument. They're decided by who controls risk. If Iran can credibly communicate that it has new options, it raises risk. If Pakistan can credibly communicate that a channel exists, it lowers risk. The outcome depends on which signal the system believes, because the system here isn't just governments, it's also shipping companies deciding whether routes are worth it, insurers deciding whether risk is coverable markets, deciding whether fear deserves a premium, allies deciding whether they need to distance themselves or lean in. And that's why new cards is such a sharp phrase. It's aimed at that entire system. It's meant to make everyone ask, what are we not prepared for? But you shouldn't confuse new cards with inevitability. It's often a negotiating posture, a way to say we still have escalation capacity, so treat our red lines as real. Whether it becomes action depends on what Iran believes it can gain through pressure versus what it might lose through backlash. And that's where Pakistan matters again. Because if Pakistan can provide an off-ramp that doesn't look like surrender for either side, the incentives shift. If Pakistan can't, then new cards becomes more than a phrase, it becomes a forecast. Here's what you should watch over the next 24 to 72 hours to determine whether a new cards is a bluff, a bargaining anchor, or a preview of action. Because the indicators show up in behavior before they show up in official announcements. First, changes in maritime and commercial risk language. You don't need classified information. Watch what happens to advisories, risk assessments, and the tone of reporting around shipping lanes. When language shifts from elevated caution to avoidance, the battlefield has expanded into commerce. Second, posture signals and operational tempo. If visible military posture increases, more escort messaging, more patrol language, more warnings, then new cards may be translating into operational preparation. If posture stays stable but rhetoric spikes, it may be pure leverage signaling. Third, intermediary tone, especially Pakistan's. If Pakistan begins sounding procedural, channels open, technical teams, framework, that suggests the talks track is real. If Pakistan's messaging becomes vague, delayed, or overshadowed by threats, it suggests the pressure track is dominating. Fourth, consistency inside Iran's messaging. If multiple Iranian voices repeat new cards language and disciplined, aligned phrasing, it suggests a coordinated signal. If messaging is inconsistent, some voices hint at escalation, others hint at talks. It can indicate internal faction competition, which increases unpredictability. Fifth, any verifiable steps that change the negotiating environment. In early diplomacy, real movement often looks boring. Small confidence-building gestures, procedural agreements, deconfliction channels, third-party facilitation. If none of that appears while threats rise, you're drifting toward path 2 or path 3. Now bring it back to the headline. Iran says it has new cards. Pakistan is preparing possible peace talks. That combination is a warning that the next phase is being shaped right now, behind closed doors and through public signals designed to force reactions. The story is not peace is coming, and it's not war is inevitable. The story is simpler and more dangerous. Both sides are trying to enter the next phase with leverage. And leverage-building phases are exactly when accidents happen, because pressure is high, timelines feel short, and leaders don't want to be the one who hesitates first.